Keith, welcome. It's such a pleasure to speak with you today.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Keith, you have built billion-dollar products and now focus on the power of gaming to elevate youth resilience as the CEO of SuperBetter. What was a personal turning point that made you commit to this mission?
Oh, there are a couple things that came together for me. I grew up professionally in the U.S. food business, so I have a brand management background. Worked for big companies like Nabisco, Keebler, and Kellogg's, and led lots of brand teams in innovation. Led teams to develop and launch over $1 billion of new products. So I love innovation. There's a part of my brain that's just a problem solving machine, and it's just let's figure out what the world needs, what problems do we need to solve, and then let's figure out how to solve them and scale them and make them profitable if it's for a company, and is as well. So part of my interest in founding SuperBetter is driven by that. I was about 20 years into the food industry. I was with the combined Keebler and Kellogg company for about 7 years. One day I had counted up, how many new cookies had my teams launched in those 7 years, and it was something like 35 cookies. And again, my problem-solving brain's like, let's do another one. But maybe it was because I was starting to have children of my own, or just where I was in my career. But all of a sudden, I'm like, my heart was like, the world doesn't need another new cookie. It needs other kinds of innovation. And so that led me on a path. I left big companies. I ran a strategy and new venture development consulting business for a decade, and founded SuperBetter. So that's one path, is just kind of the intellectual. I love innovation. Let's do innovation for good. And then on a more personal note, I grew up. I didn't have language for this when I was young, but now that I'm older and wiser as well. So I grew up with what's known as CPTSD, complex PTSD. We're all familiar with PTSD, which is kind of an acute trauma happens, or maybe multiple acute traumas, but there's an event and it causes flashbacks and right, significant dysregulation and as well. CPTS is different. It usually happens very early in life, and it's when our brains, again, in my case, is before my little child's brain was able to even formulate what was happening. But it was something was missing, emotional neglect, but there was something that said my little brain said danger. You're not valuable, right? It's kind of kicked in a shame response that said you have to earn your worth. You're not valuable. Emotions don't matter as well. So as I was growing up, I didn't have words for it. I was just, because of the shame, I was just a really quiet kid. And my parents would go to have the teacher conferences. It's like, oh, Keith is great kid, really nice kid, but he just doesn't talk enough. And even my early career, that happened as well. As I got a little bit older, I started to learn more about the psychology. I started to understand more about my own self, and learned that it was this thing called CPTSD. And then as I did research, it's like I learned that I'm not the only one. There's lots of millions and millions of people here in the U.S. and around the world have this. One of the things that struck me also was Brene Brown, who I love, and she's a brilliant TED talker, and her TED talk on shame is called "The Power of Vulnerability," but it's basically a talk about shame. Is the fourth watched TED talk of all time. So 90 million people have watched that TED talk. And so it tells me that there's a lot of interest in shame, but we're not talking about it as well. So I wanted to kind of share a little bit of that part of my story today, just to put a little bit of light on. Many people struggle from having shame as well. And so as we've developed and grown and matured SuperBetter, one of the things that SuperBetter, it does a lot of things in terms of building resilience and mental health, but one of the things it does is it provides a platform that can help individuals like myself who struggle with shame, and we can identify in the SuperBetter framework. They're called bad guys, but they're obstacles, right? That they block our progress towards our goals. For people like me who kind of have this childhood shame feelings, those bad guys might be the perfectionist, it might be the people pleaser, it could be the shame monster, and or just the self-critic, right? So there's a tool, and there's other tools in the SuperBetter framework as well. But that's the other reason. This is a tool and a framework and a mindset that I wish was available, and it would have helped me profoundly, if I had access to this type of a resource back when I was a child or a teenager or a young adult.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your story. And as I'm listening to what you have experienced, and as I was looking deeper into SuperBetter, what I'm hearing from you is that the services, the tool itself, that really has dozens of scientific journals that have shown its power in terms of reducing depression, anxiety, building resilience, and even increasing career success. I was wondering if you could help our listeners better understand the seven key methodologies that are the foundations of Super Better.
Yeah. This is the fun stuff because this is like the psychology and kind of how it works. So when I describe Super Better, I start with saying it's a mindset intervention, and so we call it the Super Better mindset. It's an easy to teach mental framework. It uses the psychology of gameplay to overcome obstacles and achieve goals in all of life. So it feels like playing life like a game. There are 7 rules. So it's like scaffolding. There's a structure that helps us look at the world differently. One of the reasons I talk about it is the Super Better mindset. There are actually a couple of reasons. One, we start as a self-help app. And so if I don't start in the right place, people are like, oh, it's an app. Or it's we never use the word gamification. I can explain why later, but we're seen as one of the big leaders in gamified health or gamification and as well. So it's like, oh, it's gamification. I always start with what we are because again, we've been around long enough that depending on how people learned about this innovation, people have different words for it. So the level setting is the Super Better mindset. And it's a way to empower youth and young adults and people of all ages to be stronger and more resilient and to thrive in today's world. The growth mindset and the Super Better mindset are complementary. The growth mindset's more of a belief system that we can be successful and that we're not fixed in terms of where we are. The Super Better mindset is more of a framework as well. So that's kind of the level setting around kind of what Super Better is. Now the 7 rules, it's intended to feel like you're playing life like a game. They feel really simple and intuitive. If you've 3 billion people around the world play video games, if you play video games, it's like, yeah, I've seen all that. I understand it, but it's a fresh way to kind of think about how I can play life with these 7 rules. If you don't play video games, our brains are wired to play, and so this is just really intuitive and easy to learn. So we've shown that this mindset framework works even in parts of the world where there are no video games. We've done pilots and collected data and published articles in rural Zambia and in villages where video games aren't something that the kids have access to, and even technology is very, very scarce. Underneath each of these 7 rules are techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, and behavioral science. So again, as I explain these to you, they're going to seem like really simple, but also just kind of understand there's a lot of science and research on what makes this framework very, very successful. So the 7 rules, the framework. The first one is to challenge yourself. You're taking on a challenge mindset. This is just that mindset that we naturally take on when we play games. And try this the next time you're about to start to play a game. You kind of notice it, after you start playing that game, your mindset and kind of how your brain is reacting. Because we don't even have to tell our brains to act differently when we play games. It's just natural. All of a sudden, when we're playing games, our brain's like, we're playing a game. I'm going to be focused on goals and growth and overcoming obstacles and achieving goals. And over 60% of gameplay is now social. I'm going to figure out how to work with allies, right? So all of this we just do naturally. So the challenge mindset, or the challenging yourself of the first rule, is just kind of, it's a reframing, like I'm going to play life like it's a game and leverage all those natural inherent strengths that my brain gives me. I'm going to go for epic wins. So epic wins are goals. So there's a goal setting component in the SuperBetter framework. That what distinguishes epic wins are that they're goals that are realistic and energizing. And so sometimes the word epic throws people off. They're like, if I'm going to work out an epic goal, an epic win needs to be, I'm going to run a marathon. But it's not epic in that way. It's epic in terms of being realistic and motivating. So realistic means it should be something that I can realistically achieve, and it should be also motivating or energizing. So I should feel good about it. I'm pushing myself a bit. So it's something that I'm excited to pursue. And also once I achieve that epic win, I should feel good about myself, and maybe it's something I tell my friends about, and we celebrate together. I'm completing quests. So completing quests are the next one. Quests are just kind of steps forward. So if this was a traditional goal setting system, that quests would be like to-dos. In our model, the quests are small daily steps. So we're huge believers in the science of tiny habits. And when we try to do too much too fast, often it leads to frustration and we have more setbacks. And so tiny habits allow us to move forward and achieve. We're identifying or finding and battling the bad guys. Bad guys are obstacles that block our progress. I mentioned a couple of examples in my earlier personal experience. But by naming those bad guys, whether it's the self-critic that we all have, in the back of our voice, but just by naming that self-critic, it'll create one awareness. So when I'm going through life and the self-critic, kind of pops up, I can be like, oh, is that the self-critic, right? And so it gives us awareness. It gives us kind of a language for us. It also makes the self-critic outside of myself. So if I didn't name the self-critic, I would just hear this voice, maybe uh, out loud, or maybe it's just a feeling, but I would have this like, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. And I'd be kind of beat myself up, not only for having hearing the voice, but also the voice itself. And so I'm like doubling down on shame. But when the self-critic is out there, I can be much more objective. It's like, that's the self-critic. It's not me. It's something else that's trying to influence my way of thinking. So those are bad guys, and we come up with different strategies to battle the bad guys, and we can kind of use trial and error. We're activating power-ups. Power-ups are quick, simple activities that give us positive emotions, like joy or others. And the positive emotions are usually they're simple and quick. The research shows that when we shift our ratio of positive to negative emotions in our lives, that it does really good things for our well-being. It supports our emotional control. It actually strengthens our vagus nerve, which is a nerve that runs from our brain in the back of our head down through our body. It touches nearly all of our organs and is very central to our nervous system. And when that vagus nerve is stronger, again, it's good for our well-being and kind of our emotional. The research shows that more positive emotions are better. So the goal is to shift the ratio and increase the ratio of positive to negative emotions. We don't want to get rid of negative emotions, so that sometimes individuals are like, we can just get rid of negative emotions, then my positive emotions can be a great ratio. But negative emotions, pain, sadness, fear, anger, right? Those things are all really important to feel, because that's our body giving us very important messages. So we don't want to stuff those or not, allow our bodies and ourselves to experience those. But instead, we want to just add more and more positive emotions into our day. And that's what power-ups do. They're quick, simple activities that make us feel healthier, happier, stronger. We're taking on a secret identity. So this is an avatar and a name that inspire us. So it motivates us. Is fun if we're doing kind of SuperBetter with a classroom or friends. It's like, oh, what's your secret identity, right? So that it forms some social connection. It also creates some what's called self-distancing. There's research around when we see our lives through an avatar, it separates ourselves from and allows us to be more objective and more successful, towards our goals. And then I believe there's one more if I didn't miss any, but it's to recruit and check in with allies. So there's a social support component, and the allies are along with us. Most days, the ally check-in is a way to feel seen and heard. But once in a while, maybe once a week, it's really helpful to spend maybe 15 or 20 minutes with an ally, and they can use this bit of framework to help coach you and support you. So maybe they can recommend a strategy for a bad guy you're really struggling with, or a quest that may be helpful, or is as well. So that's the structure. And again, those 7 rules just feel like playing life like a game. So it's really engaging and simple, and it creates a kind of a special language between individuals who are doing SuperBetter together.
Thank you so much for sharing. I have a question based on all the research that has been done to really come up with these 7 components. If someone is really doing amazingly well, let's say in maybe 4 or 5 of them, and really struggling, let's say with one, such as, amplifying the
Mm,
positive emotions as an example, and they're going through the app, and as I said, there are some pain points or struggles
mhm,
that they can't seem to overcome. I now compare it almost to a recipe. When you're making a cake, you forget the eggs. The cake is not
mhm,
necessarily going to be the same because you've lost one of the key ingredients.
mhm.
Do you consider that these seven components are essential for individuals to be able to rise to any challenge and basically build a resilience? What have you seen based on all the research?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, if this is a recipe and I leave out the sugar, does it still work? Kind of a thing. And to be honest, we test the mindset in its whole when we do our research, and so we don't do the mindset minus one. So from a data standpoint, I can't point to data that says, if you do the six of the seven rules, you're going to have outcomes, more or less. What we do find though from the research is that uh, uh, the SuperBetter is not dose dependent, if you will. And so we've done, research of various lengths, 4 weeks to 10 weeks, and measured out, results all the way up to 6 months. So, and what we tend to find is that when people adopt the SuperBetter framework, whether they're using the app or they're just learning the framework in a workshop or in some ways, correlation between SuperBetter use of the mindset and outcomes is not driven by my in the app 10 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day? Did I do six activities or 12 activities or a piece of time? And that it's more about kind of the overall use and application and kind of the frame use of the framework than it is, again, being dose dependent and saying, I want, you need to be in the app more, or if you're using this without the app in a classroom or other setting, you need to be spending more time as well. So that's one. We have another piece of research. It's not published yet, so I can't go too deep, but it's going to also show that the correlation between outcomes, between the SuperBetter use and outcomes, is, again, it kind of confirmed what I shared, and we knew from other studies that it's not about the number of activities you're doing, but in the world of therapy, and we don't position ourselves as a therapy app, per se, but in the world of therapy, one of the drivers of success in just general therapy is the therapeutic alliance, or the bond between the therapist and the patient. And so there's emerging research around this idea of digital therapeutic alliance. So what's the relationship between the digital tool and the individual using it as well? And so we're, again, this is unpublished, and I can't go into like a lot of the details, but what we've seen in this recent study is that the therapeutic alliance is a very strong predictor of outcome. So how do I feel about SuperBetter? Do I trust it? Do I feel connected to it? Does it kind of have a sense of empathy around the narrative that is telling me about, both the brand and myself as well?
Very interesting. And this brings to mind, as you're sharing the study that I look forward to reading in the near future, this question about how will AI, in your view, impact the communications that more and more youth or individuals are
Hmm.
having with chatbots in order to
Hmm.
actually tackle specific
Hmm.
challenges, depression. What is your view on the influence that AI will have and the connections that some individuals are building with these AI platforms or
Hmm.
bots? Do you believe today they are effective, and could they be more effective in the future? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, wow, that's a big loaded question. On my uh, on my LinkedIn feeds is probably by far the most, you know, uh, common conversation, and if different, viewpoints and articles about that as well. So let me share a few just insights around AI, and then I'll kind of dig into your questions. So, kind of context wise, so the youth and young adult mental health crisis started back in 2012, largely with the advent of the smartphone, and access to 24/7 technology and social media and those kinds of things. The pandemic shined a light on the crisis, but it started long before the pandemic. And now that we're in this post-pandemic world, the crisis is not getting better, and overall, it's been getting worse. So our human brains are not wired for today's technology. Our brains, our bodies, our genes, our whole human systems were designed for a very different world, and it takes tens of thousands of years to evolve and adjust at the genetic level. So we've kind of dropped on to the world, and especially our kids, but the world itself, kind of technology, without really a roadmap on how to use it for in a balanced way. So we're not adequately teaching young people how to be There are some classes called digital citizen classes. I think they need to rename every one of them digital warrior. Eventually, we're going to do a digital warrior class because it's so important. We shouldn't be, we don't want our kids to be good citizens out there in the digital world. We want them to be warriors, to understand what's great about it and how to leverage it, but also how to protect themselves. And so what we find ourselves is in a world today where just the conversion from a analog world to a digital world has caused a significant global youth mental health crisis. AI is going to make that crisis worse, not better, in my opinion, and from what I can see. And again, it's not that dissimilar from what we've seen in the last 15 years or so since the digital world. Now we're moving into an AI world. The AI world will be amazing. So some people, when I say it's going to hurt mental health, some people are like, you're anti-AI. I'm not anti-AI. I love AI. I think it's going to do great things for productivity and advancements in so many areas. But at the same time, it's going to give tools, much, much stronger tools, to all kinds of individuals and organizations that will use AI in ways to achieve their own purposes and their own interests, but that will be helpful for youth and young adult mental health and all of our mental health as well. And whether it be advertisers. Right. So the move towards pay-per-click advertising has driven kind of the types of advertising that's all about alarm and fear, right? So now we're triggering fear to get people to pay attention to our ads, so they'll click. And again, there's an economic model. Social media algorithms, of course, are optimized to keep people on the platform longer because they see more ads, right? So there's the economic. Our politics is all about divisiveness and it's us versus them, right? So that's very much enabled through because of digital technology. There are legitimate bad actors and bot farms, and I've done a lot of research lately into cognitive warfare and cybersecurity, and it's quite scary what's kind of coming at us and our kids. So as part of the context around the question of AI is going to give all those actors stronger tools, and they're going to be used in ways to achieve their goals and not just as digital technology is as well. And so whether it's inadvertently or explicitly, mental health will be negatively be impacted. So we're going to go into a world where we're in a youth and young adult mental health crisis. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Now, the tools of AI can also be part of the solution to your earlier point. There's a Harvard Business Review article published earlier this year that showed how are people using Chat GPT today, and the number one reason was therapy and companionship. And unfortunately, they group those two together because in my mind, or if you just ask someone on the street what's therapy and what's companionship, you're going to get very, very different answers. But so they're kind of grouped together as well. So it's hard, and I think it's disingenuous to say that means it's all therapy as well. Because if I'm talking to a friend, it's not, I don't consider that therapy. If I'm talking to a therapist, that's therapy as well. But it does show that in the privacy of our homes and when we have AI as our communication and against loneliness and conversations and therapy, all kind of that bundle is going to be really, really attractive, and that's going to likely continue, right? Because we're in a loneliness epidemic. AI is non-judgmental. There's a lot of good things about being able to chat with AI. So as AI develops, there's kind of two areas. I actually would keep this separate, kind of the companionship piece and the coach. It's kind of an advisor. In some ways, it's a replacement as the family unit has kind of gone away, and we don't have traditional families at the percentage that we have in past generations, right? So we lose that learning from our parents and elders and others, and so ChatGPT is going to kind of jump into that, into that space, and so, but that's one area, is just around conversation and input and coaching and advice, and that. The other is actually therapy itself. Therapy is, I believe there will be a role. Certainly, there will be a role for AI in therapy. It needs to be done ethically. It needs to be done in ways that don't inadvertently cause damage, to individuals, that don't give bad advice. So I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. I think it's way too early, right, for to kind of for that to be done at scale. There is a platform that's raised $95 million and launched, and they're kind of pioneering within that space. And I know from their advisors and leadership that that they're working to make that very, very, ethical and responsible as well. At the same time, the therapists, many of the therapists on my LinkedIn are like, this is scary, and let's be really careful as well. So I don't have the answer of what it will be eventually. As it relates to super better, we're not going to be the first mover in AI. I don't believe it. We need to be. Our innovation is different and strong. When the time's right and the role is right, we will very strategically use AI, both from an experiential standpoint as well as there is a place for, not in a therapeutic way, but for a companion ally, a digital ally, if you will, to support the experience and help individuals in incremental ways to how they can be helped today.
It's very, very interesting what the younger generation is going through, and how AI will actually even transform so radically the work environment. And I was looking at some
Mm,
statistics recently also that were showing how a lot of the entry level jobs are actually being, even today,
mhm,
eliminated as a result of the fast deployment of AI. So when you were saying that the
mm,
mental health crisis that we're already seeing is going to be amplified, it's very, very sad and very, very scary,
mm,
especially for the parents that may have kids that are within those age groups, and that are possibly in college, university, and excited to start their lives. And now they're seeing, the beauty of AI and the dark side of AI as well, and wondering,
mhm,
well, where do I fit in this world? And going back also to some statistics, I believe that have been shared on your LinkedIn post,
mm.
how more than 1 in 3 young adults aged 18 to 25 are currently experiencing mental, behavioral, or emotional health issues in the past year, and that 12% had serious thoughts of suicide. How do you think these numbers will evolve in the future as a result of the transforming workforce due to the AI integration and deployment that is really massively accelerating within corporations today?
Yeah, yeah. Well, clearly, as AI replaces entry level positions and roles, that's going to place, what yet one more burden on Gen Z. And I have three sons. They're aged between 18 and 23. And so my kids are kind of in that area. Two are still in college. And we're watching and kind of coaching them and having, being sure they're asking their professors and advisors the right questions. All right, so especially the two that are still in school around, how do I prepare myself, for a world of AI, and what will an entry level job look for me? Like my youngest is a sophomore, so in just 3 years he's going to graduate. But the 3 years from now will look very different than it does today because of the pace. So we're already kind of seeing that as well. In some ways, it's adding kind of one more thing into the world of Gen Z that's stressing them out, right? So there's climate change. There's just all kinds of other things that are uh, that that we've kind of created a generation that's dealing with a lot, and we need to give them as much scaffolding and as much support and help them through this process, as we can. The reality is that the is unemployment will likely increase, or it'll be harder for recent college graduates to find jobs. Even those that are taking non-career pathways, 'cause I'm always very careful to say, because college is not the only pathway, and there are great, pathways to careers and vocations, right, that don't require. But even those are going to have changes in entry level or apprentice or junior level job prospects as well. And so it's going to add more burden, more maybe needs to change and pivot and rethink maybe their plant as well. So it's going to be a challenge, an additional challenge into a generation that's already seeing a lot of challenges.
And what advice would you give to parents that may be noticing the struggles and the challenges that some of their kids within the Gen Z and even the millennial
Mhm.
generation is going through? Do you have any specific advice for them in terms of how to pay closer attention to the realities that their younger kids are going through, and what immediate areas of attention or action do you most recommend?
Yeah. So parents and teachers are on the front lines. So equipping, parents and teachers and coaches and others that are, day to day, face to face with young people with kind of advice or thoughts or tools and resources to to be thoughtful. One is around just communication, right? So probably the most important thing to do with our kids is to engage them in conversation. And I've grown up with three boys, so I know firsthand that that's easier said than done, and during different life stages. And but just kind of having that open conversation, we're very careful to keep the door open for communication in ways that know that our kids can talk to us about anything. We're here as a help, to help and to be a resource as well. They're often they won't come to us. We need to also kind of come to them. So find interest, find ways to communicate, open that door. For example, if they play video games, about three-quarters of kids in the U.S. under the age of 18, play video games. That can be a great conduit. Instead of like, oh, they're playing video games, is, hey, what are you playing? Tell me about some of the strengths you're developing while you're playing, right? So getting them to talk about their interests in ways that give them dignity and respect, and it's like empowering them to, like, because they know more about those video games than I ever will. Right. And so give them that as well. You can look for signs of struggle, right, as well. And so, if a child is being, unusually quiet, or kind of, their behavior's changing, right, be mindful for, for that as well. And then supportive tools can also be helpful as well. So those are that's kind of a very high level view. And whether it's parents or, again, teachers can do the same thing, coaches as well. And more, I think we need to train and coach more than I can do in a 3-minute answer to a question on a podcast. But providing tools and training and structures and frameworks can be really helpful. We're doing more of that with SuperBetter as well. So because it's a mindset framework, it's a mental framework, it can be used for mentoring and coaching. And so we actually have a grant proposal in with a partner. They happen to be in India. This is for college age females who are pursuing STEM degrees. So in India, which is a very traditional culture, there's a lot of barriers there. These are all first generation students, so that's a barrier. And then females pursuing traditionally male dominated professions is also another barrier. So kind of a tough situation. And so we're actually have built into the design of the program that we proposed a way of teaching not only the students the SuperBetter framework, but also the parents, the dads and the moms, just probably leaning a little bit more to mom, but so then they can use that language together to have some of these hard conversations. Because when those young women graduate, and they want to work in a town three cities away. In the U.S., we'd be like, whatever. In India, in a traditional culture, that's a huge deal, right? Because of that need for the parents and the families to stay together for protection and safety and social closeness as well. So just using the framework to have those tough conversations, it's the SuperBetter. We don't care what the outcome is of those conversations. That's not how we create value. We create value by having kind of, if you talk about, well, tell me about, tell me about the obstacle here. Is that a bad guy? Well, what would that be like? And what's the goal, or what's the epic win, or let's take a break and do a power up together. That framework can be really empowering as well.
That sounds amazing. How has your definition of success evolved over time? How do
Hmm.
you define success for the impact when it comes to Super Better?
Yeah, so and that's a great question, because it's definitely has evolved over time. We've been around long enough. We've kind of grown up with the digital health industry, and we've evolved as the world has changed, and the industry as well as we've learned more as well. I mean, in the early days when we were self-help app, a big part of the kind of success was around kind of engagement metrics, and that was what the industry asked. It's like, well, tell me, what's your weekly or monthly usage. And because our outcomes, so you can use the SuperBetter framework for almost anything, but the top couple of reasons, two of the top three reasons people use the framework are for anxiety and depression. And engagement's completely the wrong measurement, right? The right measurement is what we do really well, which is reduce symptoms, right? So it's the outcomes should be outcome focused, not engagement focused as well. So we started as a self-help app. The reality of mental health and well-being apps industry wide, it doesn't matter if it's SuperBetter, Calm, Headspace, or any others, is that if it's just somebody's downloading it from an app store, even if it's recommended by a therapist or a friend, retention is just really low. So the average 30-day retention across the industry is a little over 3%. So if 100 people download the Any of these apps today, kind of on average, about three of those will log in on day 30. It doesn't mean they won't ever come back, but most of them don't come back. So I never, we never, from an impact and kind of from a, how we changing the world, being a self-help app was never all that interesting. So we had a self-help app, 1 million+ people have used it. We've never put money into advertising it, right? So it's one of those where people just love the idea of SuperBetter and have adopted it. As we've moved and kind of the crux of your question around being more outcome focused, we figured out that while retention and kind of adherence in the wild, from just a digital tool around mental health and well-being is really low. If we can put this into a social context, into a classroom, into a mentoring framework, into an after-school program or a workshop, then all of a sudden participation goes way up. If they're using the app participation goes up. If they're just talking about it in the classroom, until we're learning more and more about how to bring Sue Better into the world, that dramatically drives up our impact. There as well. It also helps shift, anxiety and depression and reducing symptoms are great outcomes, building resilience, helping people be more successful. But as we've moved into the education space, one of the big industry pain points, and this is true at K through 12 or higher ed, is that the prevalence, and you mentioned some of the prevalence numbers of anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts, a few moments ago, but that all those mental health challenges are causing business model pain points. So at the higher ed level, it's impacting student success and retention, and that's kind of the core model of universities. It, impacts revenue and recruitment and reputation as well. There's a study that came out from Gallup and Lumina Foundation earlier this year for the 2025 State of the Higher Ed Industry report. It showed that two of the top three reasons college students drop out of their classes or stop out altogether are because of emotional stress and personal mental health. The other is around finances as well. So there's a real business model problem for them, and so that also helps us shift our metrics, right? So now we can point to, by bringing Sue Better into this world, we can build skills for student success. We can help with retention. We can help with academic success, right? And have these other benefits that are directly related to the way that these institutions look at their results. At K through 12, it's similar. The language gets a little bit different. It's more about classroom behaviors and grades and attendance, and right. So the emphasis shifts, but it's the same problem. Poor mental health and low resilience are causing challenges that are beyond the human side, which are big enough in themselves, but also industry and business model pain points.
And as you're in this world of dealing with all the mental health crisis and deploying it through educational platforms, how do you find the joy for yourself in
Mm.
your life? And if there would be any recipe for joy, what would be the three main ingredients that you
Oh,
believe
that's
are important?
yeah. That's I love that. I love that. So for me, the way I think about joy is that it's different than it's related to happiness, but different, right? So happiness to me is more driven by external things, right? So the moments in time. Joy, kind of the way I embrace joy is that it's more of a contentment, or like I said, kind of a long-term feeling of satisfaction and as well. It's interesting, even coming out of the world of positive psychology, and joy is a positive emotion, right? So the Dr. Martin Seligman is known as the father of positive psychology. One of his early books that was, kind of perhaps one of his most famous was called Authentic Happiness. So he started with happiness, and then he followed with a book, that was about flourishing. And flourishing is, I don't know if flourishing is exactly the right word, but it is more of like a sense of sustained contentment, and I'm flourishing and the like. I think joy is actually maybe even a better word. I don't know if it's even the right word as well. So I think about joy kind of within that way. When I was younger, I thought of joy like there was a spectrum, like because of CPTSD and growing up with shame. I was often dysregulated and had anxiety, right? And again, I didn't even know it, for a good chunk of my life what it was, and then I realized. So I used to think it was a spectrum that says, okay, if I can go from anxiety to peace and then to joy. So it's like I've got to go three steps. And as I got older, I figured out that that wasn't actually the model. And this kind of links also into my faith. So I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm a Christian, And the Bible talks a lot about joy. The word blessed in Hebrew, there are a couple of ways to describe it, but often it's used in a context around kind of this contented happiness or contented joy as well. So even the word blessed, which is everywhere, is about joy. So one of the ways I think about joy now, and this actually is it comes from the Psalms. But kind of being blessed or being having joy is like being a tree planted by the river. And so the roots go down, but there's always a source of joy and contentment. It doesn't mean the tree doesn't have seasons. It doesn't mean the storms don't come and the lightning doesn't blast off branches. It doesn't mean it doesn't rain. It doesn't mean it's not winter and summer, right? It doesn't mean that bad things don't or difficult or painful things don't happen. But the place, but joy doesn't go away because joy comes from a place that's more inner, and it's like that root that is constantly in the has access to that flowing water.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And if you could leave a message for future generations that could be opened in a time
Mm.
capsule 100 years from today, what would that message be?
Well, that's a hard one. So I think the message would be to always look to the future, but don't forget the past. Life on Earth has repeatable patterns at the cultural level, and so there's so much that we can learn from the past. My hope is that 100 years, the world is a nirvana and it's amazing, and as well. If it's like most generations, though, there's going to be challenges and problems, and there'll be different problems than what we have today as well. So there likely will be struggles, and depending on where on Earth they are, it may be different kinds of struggles as well. So I would also kind of say look to the past, but also look to the future. And imagine what the future can look like even 10 years into the future, and put that into your mind, and stretch your thinking about the possibilities. And that's going to do a couple things. So first, it can provide hope if that part of the world or where they are in the world at that point, there's a lack of hope, that can provide hope as well. But it also, when we put ideas and thoughts and future thinking into our mind, it helps our brains to focus differently, and we see more possibilities, and there's more opportunities in order to move forward and achieve the kinds of world that we all dream of.
Wonderful. And do you have any final thoughts for our listeners in terms of living more joyfully, tackling any sort of adversities that they may be facing, and just living and experiencing life to the fullest?
I'll pause with for this. So we're in a troubled world right now. There's lots of angst happening, in a lot, in a lot of ways, globally, culturally, individually, as well. And uh, the another psalm, another verse from a psalm, is that weeping may last for a night, but joy comes in the morning. So if you're in a place where you're feeling despondent and discouraged and feeling maybe even dreadful, hold out hope, because the world will change and you can change, and hope will come in the morning.
Wonderful. So, on these beautiful words, Keith, it's been an immense pleasure to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.